Hello out there! Welcome to the end, more or less, of the Story Structure Challenge. Yes, we're going to go over how you get yourself involved at the end here and actually submit what you worked on for the challenge. We're going to go a little bit more over the challenge, give you some tips. We'll do a little bit of a live edit here of a sample of what your challenge entry could have looked like. So that will be fun because it's not very good, but we like to do that just to show you how you can work on things. I have Gareth here with me. Say hi, Gareth.
Hello.
Hello. So, the Story Structure Challenge, for those of you who are just coming into this, we tasked everybody to get involved with Story Structure Challenge because story structure really does form the skeleton of your story, right? It's very important that all these ideas do come into some sort of cohesive whole, right? You don't want to just have a bunch of scattered scenes. So figuring out your structure, which can come before your first draft or after your first draft, is really paramount to having a great work. So we have some questions about the actual challenge. I'll go over the rules yet again. We'll go over some of the tips we had last week as well. But you might be thinking, I'm a pantser. Yeah, well, oh well. No, I'm kidding. If you're somebody who doesn't usually plan ahead, the idea was that this challenge was a great way for you to practice something, right? You might have learned that perhaps outlining is not as bad as you thought. You might have learned perhaps outlining is definitely not for you. But regardless, certainly we hope you enjoyed the challenge. In order to participate in the challenge, we discussed story beats. Story beats are the linchpin moments of the story, the key parts where major plot points happen, character development happens, and we have story structure, story beats built into the Inspiration Studio and AutoCrit. We spent a lot of time in there. You can always go back to those broadcasts and find out, but we'll be back in there today, and we'll be looking at our story beat sheet inside the writer's desk. The challenge rules. What did we ask you to do? We asked you to develop a beat sheet. Now, the nice thing is thanks to the Inspiration Studio, you didn't have to do this all by yourself. You could have started with a premise, and you could have actually used our Inspiration Studio to generate those, because ultimately we're going to ask you to take that beat sheet and do a little bit more with it, basically use it as a prompt. But the first part was to write a beat sheet, which you could either have done all on your own or through the Inspiration Studio. Then we asked you to write a 1,000 word scene from the beat sheet. The scene we asked you to write was the debate point, which happens right after the inciting incident or the call to adventure, sometimes known as the refusal of the call. This was the scene we asked you to write. Hopefully you have written it because submissions are going to be open in just a moment. If you haven't, well, you have a few days to write a 1,000 word scene if you want to rally, because submissions, the deadline will be on Friday, the end of the month. Okay. We will read the submissions live that make it to the finale. So we're going to vet, we're going to, pull the list down to our favorite 10 or so. And then we will read them live and you will vote. The audience will vote and you get to decide who is the grand winner. That's lots of fun and exciting. So yes, we'd already talked about this last week, the debate refusal of the call, right? What actually is this beat about? I do like this. This is the first challenge we're actually done early. Woohoo! That's nice. Although, then we have this. I haven't finished mine yet. That's fine. Either or, it's okay. You got some time. Whatever. Writers are usually procrastinators, so we're used to it. None of mine is done. The beat sheet is half done. The scene is half done. Fair enough. Fair enough. You got a bit of an advantage there. Like we told you to write the whole beat sheet in advance, and then we'd pick a beat out. So either or, though, you're going to need to work off of it, because the refusal of the call often foreshadows what's going to happen later. So it is important that you have both done, your beat sheet and your scene done, or your 1,000 word scene done, because they do coexist with each other. So we talked about it. Often it's a moral dilemma, right? The character has to decide between two options. Maybe neither looks particularly great. It deals with the consequences of the decision. The inciting incident, the call to adventure, which is the beat before it, If something major shifts and now they have to wrestle with what are the consequences by saying yes. So wrestle with that. And again, if you do your beat sheet, you know what those consequences are, right? So you can hint to it. Personal connection is important in understanding why they would say no. Getting into that depth, it could be a complicated no, right? Because there are times that there's something you really want in life and you're offered it, and then you still have to say no because of something complex about the situation. So you can get quite specific. Ooh, I like this. Refusal of the call has helped you build the structure of a novel idea you felt stuck on for 2 years. See, that's why we love these challenges, right? Sometimes they feel a little arbitrary, perhaps, right? But sometimes it's those weird, quirky challenges that can help you get unstuck. That's why we like to do them. Often, the refusal of the call includes an unexpected twist, right? So, something, you had a twist that usually is the inciting incident. And then you can even have a twist on the twist where it's like, again, maybe something they'd easily say yes, but there's more to it. And they find out at that point. Sure. A solid risk. Keep that in mind. You want to emphasize that. Often there's a time window which forces them to make the decision quickly. Not always, though. And societal pressure to get involved or not to get involved. Environmental pressure to get involved or not to get involved. Often this kind of goes with the time window, right? The storm is coming. You better get prepared, kind of thing. Ironic setting. This is something to consider. Perhaps the place where it takes where the scene happens is not a location where it would naturally fit. So it's a very serious conversation in a very silly setting, or vice versa. And foreshadows the danger. We talked about that, which is why it's so important to have the beat sheet and get spiritual. And this is also another reason why it's good to have the beat sheet, right? If you know what that final image is, or the theme stated, or where that character journey is going to go, it makes it so much easier to infuse the scene with it. And we will be looking at both. We're going to look at both the beat sheet and the scene, right? Because what I'm looking for is somebody who did a great job of writing a scene that would feed into a larger whole. Now, I know this is confusing in a sense, like it's a challenge, right? Because we don't usually just write a fragment of a greater work, but that's kind of the whole point. And I'm glad Jim says it was helpful, right? I do think it's helpful to do these exercises. It may not be your favorite work you ever do. Sometimes it is, though. You never know. But it does tend to free up your creative processes. All right. So that being said, we're going to do a live edit, and I'm also going to explain how it is that you're going to submit your entry. So I'm going to do both of those things. We did send an email about this as well, and there's a video attached to that. So if you ever want to go back and learn more about how to submit, check out that email if you signed up for the challenge, or you also could just watch this replay too. But anyway, so you are going to enter into the writer's desk. Now, everybody can do this. I know some of you are not pro members. Writer's Desk is available to free members. It just has limited functions in terms of what you can do in it. But you can do everything. You can involve yourself in this challenge even if you are a free member. I'm going to start showing you what you would do if you were a pro member, though. Okay, so you probably did your story idea in the story builder. Okay, so you might have something like this one. This is my Mars mission story. Okay. Actually, let me change the screen because I'm going to need a little bit more of it. Just one moment here. You have to shrink it down. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to attach this file into a document where you're going to write your 1,000 word scene. Now, if you started the story builder within a document, it's already attached. So don't worry about that. But I'll show you how you can double check no matter what. But what you're going to do is you're going to, with this, if this is the one you want, the Mars mission, you are going to, on the main page here, hit these three dots. You can see my mouse kind of shaking around here. And you're going to go to write this idea in a new file. Okay? Now, this is if you haven't written the scene yet, which hopefully you have. But just in case you haven't, you have a few days. So you would write this scene in a new file. You click that, it'll open up a new file, and it'll attach that story idea to it. Okay? Gareth is stealing my screen real estate. Oh, sorry. There we go. That's Bye-bye, Gareth. We'll talk to you later. So yes, you'll want write this scene in a new file. This again is if you have not written anything yet. Okay. Now, what if you have written the 1,000 word scene, but you were not in the inspiration studio when you did that, and you want to attach it after the fact? You would go to your scene. So here's my nice little scene here. You'd go to inspiration. You'd go to story builder, and it's going to ask us which one is the unlinked idea you want to link it to. So we have not linked Mars mission anything yet. We would go ahead and click that. Ta-da! And now it's linked. All right, so how you would double check that you did this right is you would have your 1,000 word scene, okay? And if you click story builder, it's all here. All right, that's how you would check. Because ultimately, it's very easy to submit. All you're going to do is go to your save. You're going to go to the drop-down that says submissions. It's right over my head. And then you're going to hit the little check. Now, be careful. You can only do this once. So there's no takes backsies, as they say. Okay. So if you want to input it a different way, if you want to put the beats in the document, that's fine, and submit it that way. I'm just saying, if you built it in the story builder, which is really the easiest way, right? You have that wonderful worksheet to work off of. It will be attached, right? We will see everything that is attached to your document. Now, if you exported all of them to a note and they're living in your notes, that would also be the case. We will also see the notes. So whatever you see on your screen in terms of what's attached to your document is what we're going to see. So we either need it to be in the notes, in the body of the text, or in the story builder. Story builder is probably the easiest. Now, some of you are not AutoCrit Pro members, and so you don't have access to story builder. So that means you might have used our templates. That would have been the best way to do that because it's all built in. You would know what to fill out. So you would have gone to add a note board, and then you would have used the AutoCrit plot-centered beat sheet and put it in here. Maybe you would have called it story structure challenge, and then you would have this note and you would have filled it all out, right? And again, sorry, I'm blocking it. And you would have filled all of this out. And if you did, then you're great. Everything is connected as well. Okay. So yeah, as long as you have this text in here, hopefully it looks better than this text. We're going to edit this in just a moment. I know Garrett's chomping at the bit just looking at it. But as long as you have everything connected, everything on your screen is connected, then we will see both things. All right. Any questions before we keep going? I just want to know. Some people are saying, they worked on the file maybe somewhere else. If you did, you do need to go ahead and put it in the writer's desk, because that is how we are accepting submissions. So you will need to put all of your text here in the middle. Okay. Your beat sheet is on your master story document with the first chapter. Do you have to swap it with the document? Okay. So yes. So what if you're using a story beat sheet that you have in another document? Okay. That would be solved by going to your story ideas. Whichever one is linked, you'll see how it's linked right here. See Mars mission. You would copy it, make a copy, and then you would link the copy to the 1,000 word submission, since you're not submitting that whole file. Do you have to make two files or put everything in one? Everything is in one, because everything is in the project. It would be called, it's a project, under these recent files. Everything would be in the one that comes straight from the writing desk. Yep. So if you are using, if this is something where you're using multiple, yeah, you're going to want to make a copy of it, and then you'll link that unlinked copy into something like that. Sharon, you accidentally submitted. Just contact me. You know my email. Let me know. This was a new process, so for some of you, you're not as used to it, so that's okay. Once again, for those of you who are not familiar with this process, if you are working in a document and you already have your 1,000 words, you can go to the inspiration tab and you can go to story builder and then you can attach it. If it's already attached, it will populate here, in which case it's fine. It's already attached. If not, you would get something kind of like this, where it says select unlinked idea. Okay. All right. If you have any other questions, go ahead in the community and ask your questions about it. Or you can email us and let us know. All right. So that being said, I'm going to pivot over here and look at this interesting work we have. We'll go through it. I'll go through it with Gareth here. Oh wait, I have one other question. I have many notes. I don't want to send you attach the story beat. Can you choose which notes you want to send? No, if you wanted to do that, you would want to make a copy of the project and then make the adjustments then, right? So if this is a project where there's only pieces of it you want, you really do need to make a new project and just take out what you don't want. Okay. All right. If there's more questions, we can get to it in just a minute. All right. In the meantime, let's dissect this this scene here, because what the author's trying to do in this scene is what we asked you to do, which is create the depth, create the character conflict, create all the intrigue, but unfortunately isn't doing the best job. So we have this opening sentence. The small, dimly lit room with its walls closing in and its atmosphere laden with tension served as the stage for an internal battle that raged within Captain Michael Harris as he paced relentlessly back and forth, his mind caught in the eye of the tempest. So, Gareth, you want to get started dissecting this monstrosity?
A bit of a bit dense, isn't it?
It is dense, right? That's the first thing you can clearly see is why is this sentence so ridiculously long? Obviously, if we were comparing with a normal fiction, if we went to pacing and we looked at the sentence variation here, first of all, we would see that our average sentence length is double general fiction. So something is askew. And then we also can see that, yeah, they're pretty long in general. There are a few short sentences mixed in here, but they are quite long. And this is a dense, dense work for sure. Somebody said it's a little out of focus. I'm going to zoom in a bit, and that should make it easier. It will kind of throw off the way that the document looks. It won't look like a normal writer's desk, but it makes it easier to read. There you go. Is this Daniel? Yes, this is not one of our submissions. Don't worry. this is an example. But yeah, one other thing too is this is something that can happen when you tell people to write something. It's like, I want you to write a scene with tension, and then they'll start on the nose writing, it was very tense. This would be called a tell, not a show, right? Instead of dramatizing the tension, we just say the character is tense. That generally doesn't actually provide much tension now, does it? You know, what you'd want to actually do is, instead of doing all of this, you know, the walls closing in, its atmosphere laden with tension served as the stage. I mean, it really feels like stage direction and thought of the author rather than particularly you know, actually giving it to the audience. You'd really want to bring up the description of this, right? You'd want to start using dramatic turns of phrase to describe a claustrophobic room so that you get all of this atmospheric laden with tension on the page versus in the abstract, right? All right, let's move on a little bit further. Before him, on the sturdy desk that bore witness to countless deliberations, lay an opportunity that could propel him to the zenith of his career, a chance to join the first manned mission to Mars, a tantalizing invitation to traverse uncharted celestial territories. So, I mean, one thing this is doing right is at least we're clear about what the conflict is, right? So let's give a little bit of props to that. But there is a little bit of question here about some of the things going on beyond the wordiness. Do we really need to know about how the history of a desk? Does it help? I don't know. What do you think, Gareth? Do you think it really helps to throw in the countless deliberations here, or would you just cut that completely beyond the wording?
Well, I'm not 100% against it. I mean,
Okay.
it feels like it's somebody trying to be very literary in terms of the language being used here as well. But I'm not entirely against it. It's kind of its own voice. The detail thereof, mentioning this desk that has borne witness to countless deliberations, it is telling you something that he's been kind of arguing over this for a long time. But it does become a little bit redundant. Not that I would say keep the first part, but in the beginning, if you scroll up a little, those first couple of lines or that first line that mentioned like his what was it? Go up so we can see the start. We mentioned, yes, the stage for an internal battle that raged within Captain Michael Harris, et cetera, et cetera. So you're telling us right there, and that's straight up a tell, which needs to be fixed, that he is arguing with himself. He's trying to deliberate what he should do. And then you're repeating that when it comes to using the desk. So it's kind of, I would say I'm not 100% against it, but pick one. you know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could literally be like Michael Harris paced relentlessly in the small, dimly lit room and get rid of all of this, and then be like before him on this, you know what I mean? And like already
Hmm.
we're like
Yep.
getting a little bit better, you know.
Just getting to the
Obviously, I'm
point
doing this just
faster.
live. The other thing too is in this lay an opportunity that could propel him to the zenith of his career, right? You don't really need this, right? You could just say lay an opportunity that could propel his career, right? Or you could even get rid of this because obviously a chance to join the first manned mission to Mars is a way to propel your career. So that's kind of redundant, right? Especially because it's going to have a tantalized invitation. So you can just see there's a lot of wordiness here that's not really adding anything. It's kind of trying to milk the scene for all it's worth, but it's not really some sort of it's not really adding anything to the page, right? It's just kind of treading water, and it's feeling very purple and like Gareth said, somebody who's trying to be very literary, right? Especially with all these things, you know, a tantalizing and very uncharted celestial territory. It's like it's a bit overwrought, you know, not just a bit. It's quite overwrought. I do like this too. Let's keep going. Yet entwined with this unprecedented prospect was an ominous caveat, a weighty caveat that whispered of the unknown, of perils lurking on the crimson frontier. Again, there's something very overwrought about all of this, right?
Yeah, that part that becomes so overwrought that it doesn't mean anything. And when I
It's
say it
true.
doesn't mean anything, I mean in the context of story as I'm
Yeah.
going through. Because why should I care? You haven't actually shown me that any of these,
Uh-huh.
what these perils are, what they
Right.
may be, of perils lurking on the frontier. Okay, you're gonna have to, if you're gonna raise something like that, you need to very quickly tell me what those perils are. Like, are we dealing with an alien race that's out there that's aggressive, and he's gonna come up against that? Because just throwing it in to make it sound like it matters doesn't mean it matters.
Yeah. No, it's true. And this is where this abstract sort of thing, like you said, you don't really know what it is. Like if you're just saying, you know, somewhere lurking in the distance was a mysterious force that was just evil, it's like, well, okay, like, but why don't you get a little bit more, you know, direct about what it is? Like obviously he might not know all of the unknown perils, but there must be something that's on the corners of his mind that he's reaching towards, right? Like it could go wrong, it could be a risk to his life or whatever it is. It's like, why do you have to be so vague about what these perils are? It feels like it's trying to be grandiose, and to your point, by being that grandiose, it's actually feels very small. It doesn't feel like, or whatever. It doesn't. It's not something we can really sink our teeth into. All right. Michael, a seasoned astronaut who had gallantly ventured into the boundless expanse of space on multiple occasions, found himself in the grips of uncertainty, the tumultuous maelstrom of doubt and contemplation. And so you have more of this, right? You're just telling us why they're thinking, but we don't really know why. Because if he is somebody who goes into the boundless expanse of space, well, why is this mission so different, right? So why don't we get to it, right? It's like really treading water about this person pondering a decision. I'd really love to know specifically what is going on, right? And this is a common thing I find. It's kind of that navel gazy sort of problem. And one reason why I have this example, because I'm hoping none of your examples are like this. But when you tell somebody, write a scene where a person is in what distress about a decision, you do end up with this a lot. So look for this in your own work. This is an extreme example, but it happens a lot. I mean, I find it in my own stuff in a first draft for sure. You have anything else to say, Gareth?
No, I think part of the problem that really comes up when you hit things like this is redundancy. It's trying to make it, you say it plainly and then you think, but that's not writerly enough. I've said it plainly. I now have to repeat it in a again. I keep saying the word literary. I know that comes across potentially as a little offensive to those who do it right, but the take on it there is he found himself in the grip of uncertainty, and then we're trying to describe that grip of uncertainty when simply saying he found himself in the grip of uncertainty would connect a lot quicker to what comes after that, explaining to me why he's in the grip of uncertainty. It's because this mission was unlike anything he's done before. So, okay, you justify that for me straight away. But with the rest of it, the tumultuous maelstrom of doubt and contemplation, you're just breathing hot air. It's just filling space that doesn't need to be filled.
Mm-hmm. So let me keep going. This mission, this unparalleled odyssey, was unlike anything he'd ever encountered. A journey with no return ticket, and an irreversible commitment to abandon all familiarity and venture forth into the realm of the Red Planet, a mission that would irrevocably transform his life and, in the process, have profound ramifications for those he held dear, those he would leave behind on the blue shores of Earth. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because it's just trying to cram so much into this. I would say there's so much redundancy in this. Gareth was just talking about redundancy, right? A journey with no return ticket obviously is an irreversible commitment. And then it's also obviously a mission that would irrevocably transform his life. Now, the ramifications on the other people is a different thought. So you might want to have something like that. But again, have profound ramifications and those he would leave behind are just the same thing stated in different ways, right? So you could easily just trim this back by just removing all of the things. Also, unparalleled odyssey was unlike anything he ever encountered is the same thing. So you could just get rid of that. You could say a journey with no return ticket. And then you could get rid of this. A mission that would irrevocably transform his life. I don't even want that. A mission that would have, I'm just doing this on the fly, so this wouldn't necessarily be my final edit. The profound ramification for, and this is already better. This mission, well, I don't want this. Let's just get rid of this. This unparalleled odyssey, a journey with no return ticket, would be a mission that would have, I don't know, I'm doing this on the fly. We would still want to clean this up, but automatically this is already a better sentence than what we had a second ago. We don't need this anymore either.
Yeah.
Know what I mean, Gareth? It's that, I think it's that impulse you have that it's like, hey, the only way the audience is going to understand how dramatic this is if I talk about it again and again and again and again. And that's really not true. You could say something once really well and it can land really well. And again, if you dramatize the effect of it, if you dramatize their decision making, it would come through as well.
I mean, the punch you get in this one, or the point you get in this one anyway, I probably would have kept the start of the sentence the way it was before, kind of mentioning that this was not this was a mission unlike any done before, and then simply end the line with a journey with no return ticket. Well, that's it. It's just, yeah, he's never done. This is different, and the reason is he's not coming back, and everything else around that is fluff, absolutely useless. Because we get that as soon as you read that, a journey with no return ticket. Again, as a reader, you're allowed to use your own brain in that kind of in that sense, and think at that moment, wow, he's having to leave behind everything. So can you then, if you make me consider that, then in the next paragraph, or maybe give me a glimpse of who he's leaving behind, think about the people, draw a bit more of that for me, but do it in an order that's following what you're directing my thoughts to do. And in that moment, it's just a journey with no return ticket. This is new territory for him, and all that other fluff is completely useless.
Yeah, exactly. All right. In a quiet corner of the room, nestled in the shadows, sat Emma, Michael's steadfast companion and confidant, her eyes a reflection of the turbulent sea of emotions that swelled within her. Yeah, no. See, again, like, you don't have to actually say what you're supposed to think about it. Just actually dramatize it. Dramatize how her expression is, and therefore we would know, right? So what would Emma do if she was a turbulent sea of emotions, right? She might even refuse to look at him, right? And, her eyes refusing to make contact or something like that. And then it's a turbulent sea of emotions as well within her. You don't actually have to state that. The fact that you have to state that, if you find yourself writing like this, where it's like, there's a turbulent sea of emotions swelling within them, you're probably not actually demonstrating to the audience, right? Because otherwise it would be redundant. And if it's not redundant, then ask yourself, why aren't you dramatizing it? It's very helpful. You want me to keep going, Gareth?
No, you're absolutely fine there. Yeah, it's just entering into expositional territory now.
Yeah.
I'm starting to crave when I get to this point. We're a paragraph or two in, and I'm thinking, where's the action? what are you showing me anything here? You're not allowing me to. It's just, yeah.
Because even something like this, the weight of their unspoken conversation permeated the room, casting a solemn pall over the proceedings. All you have to do is say, they stared at each other silently. That's everything, like, they were speechless, like, you don't have to actually say that. And in fact, if you were to put in something like, they were speechless or something, that's not the best sentence, don't get me wrong, but you can see how just putting that, like, look how it just pops on the page. It just kind of has a thud moment, right? And we can see that, whoa, that's an impact. Length does not necessarily equal impact, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and there's a sense as well. You can work a lot with kind of extra character stuff in here. We get a bit more feeling, a bit more emotion into something like that as well in the description, where you kind of sit half and half between action and just straight description, which is, for example, her kind of distant gaze, her eyes, how she's not looking. If we're talking like we're from Michael's point of view here, you could describe in that section how he looks to her, and we're getting the description of her and her appearance and her eyes from his perspective. And there's a moment you say where his eyes search for hers. He's trying to make eye contact and she won't. She's just looking away. You do something like that, you've got a sense of longing from that character. It's like, I'm trying to make a connection with you here. And again, trust the reader. They can read into that as like, this looks like it's possibly a marriage falling apart because he's about to take a one-way ticket to Mars. Like, clearly she's not going. Now I'm intrigued. So can they start talking now? It would be the next thing that I want to see.
Yeah, and so, like, this whole paragraph is just, get rid of this. This is just him contemplating, let's keep going. Could he bear the thought, blah, blah, blah. This is just more and more thinking. The weight of responsibility as a father and a husband collide with insatiable curiosity. Okay, fair enough. But can we see this dramatized, right? We're just really spelling this out in a summary sort of way. We're not actually seeing it, because there are ways you could do that, right? You could literally dramatize it by having them, talk with their children and be like, oh, or what is this insatiable curiosity towards what? They could be fiddling with something that is a dramatization of that, whatever it is they want to discover or something like that. The room seemed to contract, its walls inching closer, as if mirroring the constricting confines of Michael's mind. Yes, like, I'll try to avoid this sort of stuff. It's just it's so literary and so over the top. There's ways you can do it in a subtle way where it isn't just so explicit. Like, this sort of symbolism works the best if it doesn't hit you in the face, right? You can have characters in claustrophobic settings, which does mirror their mind, but you really shouldn't spell that out to the audience. Let them figure that out for themselves. Let it be even in their subconscious mind. Maybe they wouldn't even consciously be aware of it, perhaps.
Yeah, I would think things like that as well. A description like that wouldn't be entirely awful. Just take out the as if mirroring his mind. It's like you're putting that image in there as symbolism. You know, the walls seem to be closing in on him. Like that's it. You just need to say that, and I get the vibe. You don't need to then say, "Oh, and by the way, I'm using that as a symbol to represent his mindset." It's like, no, we get it. We get it. Don't be afraid to do things like that.
Yeah.
I see. In fact, a lot of the time, it makes for some really nice poetry. You know, in the
Mhm.
writing with great symbolism.
Yeah,
Lee mentioning there, you know, some of this depends on style. This is badly written as intended, but there are phenomenal authors who are wordier.
that is true.
100% true, and they're
Yeah.
landing it right because they're not. I always use the phrase, and everybody laughs when I do use it, but over egging the pudding. It's kind of an aphorism that I grew up with. It's great writers that are using great symbolism and putting just drop the symbol in. You don't need to over egg the pudding and then turn around in the next half of that sentence and say, "Hey, check out the symbol I just used. Here's what it means." So no, trust the reader.
I mean, when we say wordy, when I was mentioning wordiness, it's that they're being too wordy about what they're talking about because it's not depth. It's just shallowness with more words. The authors that are good at being wordy, as it were, maybe they're slow paced in terms of what they are talking about. Like they're not like action filled in the same way. There's not like a billion things going on. But you'll find that when they talk about things like distraught people, emotionally distraught people, they are getting into much more detail and specificity about it than this. This is very vague, and it's just using a lot of adjectives and things to describe a vague emotion. It's not really getting more depth or specificity. And I would say you will see that in the authors that are more wordy, as it were. So no, you don't have to write like, Andy Weir is the go-to. I always mention, like, he writes like a million miles an hour and things are always happening and short sentences. Not everybody's going to write the same, but you don't want to be overly wordy for what you're talking about. And right now, there's just not enough content here to justify the wordiness because we don't really know very much, right? We have a very vague idea. We understand what it's like to want your family. We have an understanding of what it's like to perhaps seek the unknown, but that's about all we have going on. We don't really have anything else. And that's not that complicated, right? If you want to be more wordy, let's get deeper about it. Like, what does all this mean? Clearly, this is just awful. Well, yes, that's a point, right? It is just awful. But it's good to get into kind of the why. Why is it awful? Because that's where sometimes the shoe can fit, and we can be closer to this than possible. Obviously, when you have a lot of awfulness altogether, it's much more obvious.
And part of this so far is it's just going on and on and on about nothing.
Yeah,
Those
really.
those key points that we need are kind of buried in there,
Mhm.
and they're suffocating.
Yeah. Well, it's like even the first dialogue you get, and I have the dialogue highlighted here. So you can see it took all the way down to here to get my dialogue. What if I never come back? He whispered, his voice barely a breath as the question hung suspended in the air, reverberating through the silence that envelops the room unanswered. Like there's just so much repetition in that. And the whole thing doesn't even need to happen because we already know this question. So, like, the whole paragraph could go, but even if you wanted to have him whisper that, you don't even need any of this. You could just get rid of all of it. It's not necessary at all. Of course, the whole thing isn't necessary. Let's keep going. Emma's eyes, brimming with love yet fraught with unspoken fears, locked with his, creating an unspoken bond, a conduit through which their souls commune. Wow, this is great. Michael, we have traversed many a turbulent path together, she murmured, her voice a gentle caress against the tempestuous backdrop. I've always stood beside you, an unwavering pillar of strength and support, fostering the pursuit of your dreams. But this is different. Mars, with its untamed landscape and formidable challenges, presents a danger that surpasses anything we have faced before. The risks, Michael, they scare me to their core. Now, my core. You can see how this, when you get into dialogue, gets really bad because it doesn't sound anything like how anybody talks. Because, I mean, maybe if you're on a soap opera, but that's about it. I about the only thing I like from it is that this is different. That just sounds pretty natural. Other than that, I would probably get rid of it all. I would be like, Michael, we've been through a lot, but this is different. That's probably more realistic to what the person would say, right? I don't know what you think, Gareth, but more or less something like that.
Yeah, it's this is the first time I'm seeing this. It's
One
the
of those
dialogue
things.
here
It's like, where do you even start, right?
is just, I've been sitting here this whole time and thinking, when am I going to get some dialogue? When are these people going to start coming to life? And then you make me suffer with this.
And then you're
The
like, no, stop talking.
It's like, now be quiet. The it like that is just, well, number one, it's on the nose. Number two, it's so on the
Uh-huh.
nose, it's not like anybody actually speaks.
No.
And number three is not particularly good dialogue either. However, one thing that I do sometimes recommend to people is, if you're struggling with dialogue, making it as natural and as dramatic and interesting as possible, is maybe starting like this is not the worst place to go. Is think about, in this scene, what it is you want the characters to say. What are they trying to actually say, and write it out completely on the nose like this. But then you're gonna have to come back and fix it, make it more dramatic. But if you can see it on the page as, right, this is the information that I'm trying to convey. Now what can I do? And a lot of the time with great dramatic dialogue and dramatic writing, something like that, that gigantic diatribe there, is going to be perhaps 3 to 4 very short exchanges between those two. And often the first, or the most interesting way to hook in, is that he doesn't actually say, what if I don't come back, and directly speak his
Mm-mm.
concerns. He will speak about something, or say a line that's referencing something that seemingly is not connected to the problem at all. Or, it could be, but they might be sitting there quietly in this room, and you've got a feeling that everything is going wrong, and this is a real rift between them and a problem. And, he just says, um, like the ship leaves in 5 hours, or we leave in 5 hours, or he asks her a question. Questions are always a great thing as well. Perhaps they have a dog, and the thing he just says to her is like, "Have you found somebody to look after, Benji?" And we're just kind of like, "What's going on here?" But then, as
Mhm.
that exchange continues, you see what they're really talking about under the surface. He starts to say that, no, because she's expecting him not to go, basically, and he's wrestling with the idea that any minute now he's going to have to walk out of that room. So that just, again, brings the feeling across, but opens it up into a much more interesting scene between two people, with just very short, quick, realistic things.
All right. So let's keep going. And we have a bead of sweat in the face of uncertainties. I understand your concerns, blah, blah, blah. Think of the profound discovery. Again, it's like, if you were really trying to sell this on somebody, you wouldn't be this vague, right? You wouldn't just, it would, like, what is going on? Is this really some vague thing that he's wanting, or is it something more concrete? If it's something as vague as just discoveries and uncharted frontiers of knowledge, that's not a lot to stake your life on, right? Now, perhaps, I mean, there are some times that people will go into life-threatening situations because they want to see what actually happens. But it's it's not very smart to have the I'm seeing there's comments here because I think I might have misspoken about the date. So I'll get to that in a second. Uh, there is it doesn't benefit us, right? This whole conversation is just not sharing anything. This would be the moment where it's going to be kind of a like, let's get to what this really is about, right? And so if this really was something this vague, then the other character might be the kind of person that's like, you're always just doing this to prove you can. You don't have to, you don't have anything to prove, or things like that. Um, you know what I mean, Gareth? Like, it is not something where the other person would be like, I'm going to speak in a vague way about what it is I want. If it
Mhm.
is something vague like that, you'd probably have the other character be like, yeah, what is this about? All you care about is just some weird random thing. And then the other character would get into it a bit more.
Yeah.
And then you would have an opportunity to actually explore that, right? What is it really about? If it's some unfulfilled thing, well, maybe it's like, I don't know, they never felt like they mattered to their parents or something, right? And so then the other person be like, it's like, you don't have anything to prove, or whatever, I care about you. Who cares what those other people think, right? And it would just tell you a lot more about the character.
Well, I can see a comment there, Sharon. Yeah, it's quite funny. Might work if he talked like this, and the wife called him out on being an alien, since he doesn't talk like a human. So you get away with something like that, and then her response is just like, 30 years and you still haven't learned to talk like a human.
Yes, yes. Now, so people are asking about the submission date. I believe it is July 3rd, not June 30th. I believe I'm incorrect on that. In fact, I believe if you go here and you look at submissions, it says yes, ends in 5 days. So yes, that is correct, which would be the end of the second. So that is correct. My apologies for that misspoke. We have a different schedule going on next week because of July 4th, so I can tell you we will have a premiere of a surprise video at 1 p.m. on July 4th, and then our live reading of the finalists will actually take place on July 5th, since we know a lot of people will be celebrating Independence Day with their families and whatnot. So we're going to shake things up a little bit next week. But overall, I mean, let's just keep going down. So we have blah 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 blah, and then finally, she just says, "Is this mission worth risking everything?" And then he just says, "You're right." So even with all this overwroughtness, well, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? And I think what can happen is when you're writing all of this thing and all this internal maelstrom thing is, you'll be like, oh, well, through all of this rigmarole, yeah, they solved the problem in their own head. But that can in fact happen, but generally it's better if it's more instigated by something, right? So it would be better if the conversation would have actually gotten at something, like kind of like a counseling session, and they kind of have a back and forth, and you get the character has a bit of an epiphany, and they're like, you're right, I am just kind of going after it for no good reason. What am I thinking? Just being like, you should do it. No, you shouldn't. You're right. Like, that's not a very compelling scene ultimately. So all of this wordiness is not really getting at something where a whole lot happened, right? They just basically had a yes, no, and then there was a resolution on almost nothing. And this is not what we want. So if you're writing this scene, keep that in mind. You can end the scene where the character has resolved ultimately they aren't going to do it. You can end the scene where they ultimately resolve they are going to do it, because the refusal is just that initial debate, right? Are they going to do it? Are they not? Maybe they won't, and then they kind of decide they will. They can land either way, but it should be a scene, right? It shouldn't just be a okay. Like, if it's that, then it's not a very compelling scene, let's be honest. And not a lot happened. So then it's like, why did you even need the hesitation in the first place? If they were just going to be like, yeah, you're right, all you need to do is say something simple, and I'm going to completely change what was so important to me 5 seconds ago. So any other comments, Gareth, before we move on?
Now, going along the lines of the kind of first draft dialogue thing, there is value to be seen in something like this if it were in your first draft, because here, with what he's saying, we have a sense of stakes. My place is here with you, with everything, the bonds we've created, the life together, everything. That is our actual stakes. He's leaving all of that behind and going. But like I said earlier, it's like 90% of all of this can just be eliminated and push that right up to the top. He's leaving. He's on a one-way ticket. Therefore, he's risking leaving behind everything. And the faster you get to that, the more involved I can be. Because, like, okay, now we're following up this general, I don't want to say it's somewhat abstract, but it is somewhat abstract when it says like it's a one-way ticket. He doesn't expect to come home. When we don't really know a whole lot about him at that point, it is kind of abstract. But as a reader, again, we think that's fairly heavy. And then we move straight into, and that means leaving everything behind that I built. So now we're stacking stakes on top of the already fairly abstract notion, which, do it quick. Just do it quick.
Yep. You had a 1,000 word submission ready after the stream may only have a haiku. I'm sure it's not that bad. I mean, come on. I did try to make it as bad as possible so that you would feel better in comparison. So don't feel like what we're saying is telling you you can have a scene of internal debate or have a scene with a yes, no. It's how you do it, right? Is there actually a debate going on? Or is it just I think we should do this? Nah. Okay, like, no, if that's really at the core of what's happening, then no, it needs to be why no, why yes. Get more specific about it, dig deeper, and things like that. All right, so we're going to go back to this. For your submission for this challenge, should you have 2 files or only one? Only one. It will all live in this project. It's going to look a little strange right now because I wrapped it so I could zoom in. But if you go to your story builder, you will see it here, right? Captain Michael Harris, all of this. If it's in here, then it will get attached. It is not 2 files. The story builder idea has attached to your project. Okay? Or it could be in your notes, right? If it's in your notes, then that's fine as well. Hold on, I've got to zoom out. There we go. If it's in your notes, that would be fine as well. If you filled this out, okay. If you end up putting it in the body, we're not going to reject it. It's just there's no reason to do that. You have this nice little template if you're a pro member, and you can use that. Or if you're not, we have our nice little template in our notes, and you could use that. Okay. All right. So yeah, if you pasted it all in the main document, you're good to go. You'll just hit save, and then you'll go and hit submission. So either way, whatever you see on your screen is what we're going to see on the screen. So if when you clicked inspiration, story studio, you see your story beat, we'll see it. If you see it in the notes, we'll see it. If you see it in the body, we'll see it.
Yeah, all right. I would say with the attachment confusion and stuff like that, Tammy, if it gets too confusing for you in terms of knowing whether it's attached and all that, just drop your beats into the body alongside your 1,000 words. That'll be absolutely fine. Some people did mention there, like not seeing the submission button, and yes, good call. You may need to actually just log out completely from AutoCrypt rather than refreshing or closing the window or anything. Log out completely, log back in.
Yep, and if you ever have any trouble, just hit this button right here, this little bubble. No problem.
And I know we had a bit of a question too, because I think this ties into it from last week's stream. There was a question I came across, which was Seema wondering, when you read out the scene, will you be giving listeners any context for the scene? And I assume yes.
Yes. No worries. Yes. I won't have time next week to do the entire beat sheet plus all the entries for the ones that we pick. But I'll do enough to give you a context of what is going on. Yeah, I'll do a little summary myself. Enough to understand the scene, because it is not my expectation that you are going to begin a scene with any sort of context that's going to make it clear. The beat sheet can do all that work for you.
Correct. And the another one that I saw from last week was a bit of a question, not so much a question, kind of a concern, was like, if I'm writing this in isolation, won't people be kind of confused about the context of the characters who are in that scene and what's going on? That's part of the challenge.
Yeah.
Is making sure that when we read this piece in isolation, now bear in mind, we don't have to know absolutely everything about the characters and et cetera, to set all that context. No, we're treating this as if it is just a passage that's been lifted out of a novel. But certainly reading through it should get a notion of who the characters are. And that's a very different thing. What's their relationship? And that'll all come through in the way that they speak to people, the way they speak to each other, and react to one another, and what's happening within that scene. So yeah, just think of it as though it is a part in the middle, but no, you don't need to get into info dumps and try to put all this context in there.
Please don't.
Yeah,
because I mean, if you do a scene and it's like people are arguing with each other and there's a long history up to that scene, you don't have to give us the reason, just have them arguing, because in the beat sheet, I will know the reason and I will clarify that to the audience before you get into the scene. So if it's like, they hate each other because somebody stole something at the beginning of the book, and then they later have a scene which isn't directly about that, but it's affected by it, that's fine. I will give them the context. All right. What day are we reading them? July 5th. So the day after Independence Day in the United States. So yes, we will join you next Wednesday for that. But speaking of things coming up, tonight in the fantasy, if you liked reading bad fiction like we just did, well, we'll do more of that tonight. Tonight at 7 p.m., I'm going to go through the back alleyways of Amazon, finding books that are not selling very well, and we're going to dissect perhaps why they aren't selling very well. It's a great process. I would say I try to, even though we have a little bit of fun of it, I would say even if I were the author that we are looking at, I would find it very helpful, because feedback is helpful. And I do genuinely enjoy looking at it, partly because it can be humorous to see, people attempting to write and not doing a great job, of course. But it also can be very beneficial because we learn stuff, because you can see yourself in it too sometimes. So sometimes, you're almost laughing at yourself. And so that's fine. Tomorrow in horror, what do we have going on in Horror Club, Gareth?
We're making a story. So,
Ooh.
yeah, just for everybody in Horror Club, have some fun. We're going to play around with the Inspiration Studio and
Ooh.
just as a group come up with characters and crazy things in the world and see what happens. We'll maybe do a few stories if we have time for it.
Nice, 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 nice. I love this question. What about the short story challenge? What are you talking about? Which short story? No, I'm kidding. Last month we did a short story challenge. When will that be announced? Thursday at 1 p.m. So join us live for that. We are excited to reveal the winners of the short story challenge. So yeah. We'll be here. We will not be reading them live because the short story challenge, first of all, is a longer work. And also, we are not actually publishing them. The winners will be printed in an anthology. That's a trophy anthology, but it's not a published work with an own ISBN and all of that. And so we're not trying to put it out there either. So it feels like it's been kind of shared with anybody yet. We will give you some information about them because our hope is that you will want to read them, and you often in the community the authors share it. In fact, if you want to read some of them right now, if you go into the author community, there is a whole section for short story submissions, and there's quite a few in there from the AutoCrit community, and they're great. So many of them maybe have already been shared. And if they have been, I will let you know so you can find them after our announcement on Thursday. But yes, we will be announcing those finalists on Thursday. It's very exciting. And of course, we always have our accountability club every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So please join us for that as well. Is it Wednesday at 1 p.m.? No, the horror club is 6 p.m. Eastern. Yep. All right. So Gareth, do you have anything else before we wrap this up?
No, I'm all good. I hope everybody enjoyed the kind of mindset walkthrough. And I can see Laurie mentioning, will the winners know in advance of Thursday? No, they will not.
Nope.
Live announcement.
Nope, live. So if you are somebody who submitted, you can be here live and be like, yay, we can experience all the excitement with you. Of course, you can always watch the live stream later. And we will also, of course, inform you because we will need information so we can send you your trophy printed anthology, of course. All right. You signed up, but you can't go now. That's okay. There's no penalization for RSVPing and not showing up. It's fine. But any pro member can show up. So just in case you're not sure, if you don't quite understand how it works, if you're a pro member, you can come to any of the clubs. There's no extra charge for them. So that's, again, tonight, 7 p.m. fantasy, tomorrow, 6 p.m. horror, 11 a.m. Accountability Club on Monday. And that's all Eastern time for sure. All right. Somebody asked about a mystery club, perhaps. That's all I'm going to say, perhaps. All right. So you need to watch all the videos of the shop. Feel free. Go back and check them all out. They're there for you in the channel. And like I said, there'll be a surprise video on the 4th. We aren't going to leave you without something at 1 p.m. We'll just be doing our live stream on Wednesday next week because of the holiday. That being said, I look forward to seeing you all around the community. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining me, Gareth.
Take care, everyone. Thank you very much.
All right.